Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on the role of town and parish councils in creating more age-friendly communities. My name is Natalie Turner. I'm the Deputy Director for Localities here at the Centre for Ageing Better, and I'll be your chair today. Now, as chair, I'm going to start with a few quick housekeeping points before I go into a little bit more detail. So the session is being recorded and we'll share the recording, but also slides and a link to the report that we're discussing today with all attendees after the meetings. So you can relax and listen and get that afterwards. If you experience any technical issues today, please message the host directly using the chat function and they'll be happy to assist. And if you want to use closed captions, you can access this by clicking on the Show Captions button, which is also at the bottom of your screen. We're going to be doing a Q&A today, starting at about 10:45. So use the Q&A to post your questions. We'll be selecting a range from these to include for that panel discussion and Q&A. So please do that. And with that important duty done, I'm going to just do a quick introduction to the Centre for Ageing Better. We work on evidence and policy solutions to tackle inequalities in ageing. We're working to make our homes, workplaces and communities inclusive of older people, as well as building an age-friendly movement so that society sees ageing in a more positive and also realistic way. We're a charitable foundation, and that's part of the Government What Works network. Now, so as we all know, and I'm sure this is why so many of you have joined us today, England's population is ageing. Now, this is a real cause for celebration because more of us are living longer, right? And often healthier than generations gone before. But it's not without its challenges. So it's going to change what we need from our neighbourhoods and services for years to come. But if we get it right, more of us stand to benefit from and actually enjoy these longer lives. Now, over half of the people in this country aged 65 or older live in a town or parish council area. So we think you're an important part of the solution. And I'm just, before I get moving over into sort of the main agenda, I'm just going to sort of launch a poll, which I hope my colleague has ready for us, just to find out what your thinking is around how important this is as an issue for your town and parish council at the moment. It's good to see lots of high priorities, but also a real mix in there. And some people are kind of saying on the low, don't know. So I'm hoping that the content from today, for those of you for whom it's a priority, it will help move your agenda along. And for others, it will give you a way in to this issue. So this is also one of the reasons why last year the Centre for Ageing Better worked with Arup and Housing Lynn to better understand how town and parish councils can, but also are already improving life for older residents. We found examples, really powerful examples of local action that if replicated, we think could benefit more people across the country. So in the webinar today, we're going to be talking a bit more about why this matters, provide some key insights from our recently published Age-Friendly Town and Parish Council Guide, but also showcase some councils already leading the way. We'll be hearing from 4 speakers. Charlotte Lewis, who's the Senior Programme Manager for Localities and who's led this project for the Centre. Louise Bareham, who's the Town Clerk for Faversham in Kent, who's been doing brilliant work on this issue. And Julia Alden and Councillors Cheryl Kirby from Yate in South Gloucestershire, who together are going to talk about some of the actions they've been putting in place, particularly around social connections. Then we're going to finish off, as I said before, about 10:45, a panel discussion and Q&A when we'll bring in a couple of more speakers and we'll be able to answer some of the questions that have come through to us. So with that, let's begin. And I'm going to now hand over to Charlotte. You're on mute, Charlotte.
Apologies, that would help. Hi, everyone. I'm really pleased to be with so many of you here today to be able to speak about age-friendly towns and parishes. So I've got about 15 minutes to present today, and my presentation is going to draw on the content of the guide that Natalie mentioned, our recently published Age-Friendly Town and Parish Councils Guide, which I know many people on this webinar contributed to. So thank you to those of you who have. So in terms of my presentation today, I'm going to start by making the case, which Natalie has already started to do, for why we need to create age-friendly town and parishes, then go on to share what it actually means to make a town or parish council age-friendly. And then I'm going to finish off on how you might get started in making improvements to your area. So to start off with, making the case. So if we go to the next slide. So we know that people who live in town and parish council areas tend to be older. So if we were to look at the population of England as a whole, 18% of people are aged 65 and over. But in areas that are covered by town and parish councils, this figure is 23%. Now, the UN defines a super-aged society as a society where over 20% of people are aged 65 and over. So that means that on average, town and parish council areas are well into being defined as super-aged societies. And as Natalie said, and from this starting point, our population is continuing to age. So this graph on the screen shows the percentage change that we are expecting in the population by age group in the next 20 years in the purple bars and in the next 40 years in the green bars. So as you can see, this population increase is going up across the age groups, with the biggest rise by far in the 80 plus age group on the right hand side of the screen, where you can see we're predicting that the number of people over 80 in England will over double in the next 40 years. Now, in many ways, this is absolutely fantastic news for society, and in the case of today's webinar, for towns and parishes. So we know that older people contribute enormously to our communities, whether that's as volunteers, as workers, as carers, as engaged citizens. And this chart on the screen shows just one way that this is happening. This chart shows the volunteering rates by age, and you can see that people aged 65 to 40, 65 to 74 are the age group that are most likely to volunteer, and that's followed by the over 75s. Now, you also might spot on the screen that across all age groups, there was a significant dip during COVID in the amount that people were volunteering, and these rates haven't returned to their pre-pandemic level. So it's in this context that it makes the outsized contributions of over 65s all the more important to recognise and to nurture for our communities to thrive. So this shows just one way of how when towns and parishes can support older residents to be actively involved, they can generate social, economic, cultural benefits that make life better for residents of all age groups. Now, there are lots of different people, organisations, community groups within town and parish council areas that have a role to play in making these communities more age-friendly. But the role of the council specifically in being a placemaker, a facilitator, a service provider means that their role in this work is really fundamental. Now, as many of you on today's webinar will know, the work of local councils typically spans three areas: delivering services to meet local needs, giving the community a voice and representation, and improving the quality of life and community well-being. So all three of these areas provide opportunities to ensure that your town or parish is a welcoming and supportive environment for residents of all ages. And because of this, I am sure that there are many things going on in every town or parish represented here today that is already making it a great place to age. And I hope throughout the course of today's webinar, you are able to reflect and identify what some of those things already are, as well as considering how you may go one step further. So hopefully after that, many of you are believing that making your town or parish a better place for people to age in is something that you need to do and something that you can do something about. The next section of my presentation is going to explain how you go about doing that. And to start us off, I want to provide a bit of a shared definition of what we mean by an age-friendly community. So an age-friendly community is a place of any size which enables people to age well and live a good later life. So that's somewhere where it's possible for people to continue to stay living in their homes, participate in the activities that they value, and contribute to their communities for as long as possible. So these are places where people feel connected and respected. They're places that promote the behaviours that help us to stay healthy and active for longer, whilst also reducing barriers to our staying involved and contributing if or when our abilities decline. So in order to help communities realise this vision, the World Health Organization developed the Age-Friendly Communities Framework back in 2007. And this image here on the screen shows the 8 domains of age-friendly communities, which is the core framework that was developed by the World Health Organization by speaking to older people all around the world. So these 8 domains are the aspects of community life that can help us to age well. So what you'll notice here that's really important is that we are not just looking at health and social care, but we're considering the variety of different aspects across the built and the, oh, sorry, apologies. We just want to click on to the next slide. Thank you. Apologies for that. I'll take a step back. So these 8 domains that you can see on the screen are the aspects of community life that can help us to age well. So you'll see that these don't just cover health and social care, but consider the variety of different aspects across the built and the social environment that can make a difference. So these are outdoor spaces and buildings, transportation, housing, social participation, respect and social inclusion, civic participation and employment, communication and information, and community support and health services. So this framework encourages us to pay attention to the needs and perspectives of older people under the 8 different domain areas, because we know that this can make the difference between older age becoming a barrier or not in a community. So it doesn't matter if you're looking to create an age-friendly town, a county, a city, the things that people need to live well don't change. But what we know can change is the ability, the powers, the resources for different people and organisations in that place, like town and parish councils, to be able to make a difference on those 8 different domain areas. So that's why, if we go on to the next slide, we've translated these 8 domains into the age-friendly town and parish activity wheel. So this wheel summarises the actions that town and parish councils could take to make their local place more age-friendly under the different domain areas. So in some cases, some of these actions are about you playing an advocacy role. In other cases, it's just about paying particular attention to the needs of older people as you deliver what you're already doing. And in some cases, it might be about supporting or delivering something new in your area. So this wheel was produced in collaboration with town and parish councils across England and Wales. And because of this, every single activity that we've listed on this wheel is happening somewhere. It's being delivered by some town or parish council. But no one place can do all of these things, and some of these activities are going to be more appropriate for some communities than others. So I'd invite you to consider this as an overview of what you could do rather than an instruction list of all the things that you have to do. And at the end of my presentation, I'll share a bit about how you might make the decision on which of these things you go about doing. So within the guide, alongside this wheel, there is a page on each domain which provides a lot more detail and some case study examples. But I'm just going to zoom in on a few domains and a few example activities just to give a flavour of the wheel. So under transport here, as a town or parish council, you could be supporting alternatives to private or public travel, like community transport. So that could be through your town or parish actually delivering a community transport service, like we'll hear a little bit about from Faversham later on today, or it could be about working with local community groups to support or promote any existing schemes. Another example, if your town or parish maintains parking or bus shelters, you could review these to ensure that they are accessible to all ages. With car parking, this could be about ensuring that there are affordable options that if there is payment, it doesn't exclude people who rely on cash or don't have a smartphone. And under bus shelters, it might be about ensuring that these are weather protected and crucially have seating with armrests. Under social participation, The council can play a really important role in supporting older people to self-organise so they can host the things that they want to in their local area. And by doing this, we've seen that councils are supporting activities and events that meet the diverse range of interests and needs of older residents locally. So, not making assumptions about who older people are and what they want. We're talking about a huge range of the population. One example way that we are seeing some councils do this is through specifically supporting older people's forums to exist in their town, like through providing free room hire, helping with funding applications, or connecting the forum into what's already going on across the town or parish. But that's just one example. And finally, under community support and health services, you might be providing information about aging well. So, principal authorities will have a public health team who will want to share opportunities and information about how residents can age well. And town and parish councils are really important mechanisms to get that information out. That information could look like opportunities to take part in strength and balance classes locally, information about nutrition and hydration and how our needs might change as we age. But you can support getting that information out there, especially to residents who aren't online. So those are just a handful of examples. There's lots more in the guide. I'd really encourage you to take some time to have a look at, and we'll hear even more from Yate and Faversham Council later on in the session. So how do you go from that big, long potential wheel of all the things that you could do to what you will actually do? And that's what the final section of our guide is there to help you to do, our age-friendly activity plan. So within this guide, we've produced a number of templates that will help you go through a process within your town or parish of mapping what's already happening in your area that is making it welcoming and supportive environment to older residents, and then working with other community groups, services, local residents to decide the actions that you can take across your town and parish to build on what you already have. And finally, the final section is the guide is there to help you embed that commitment of making your town or parish a better place to age for the long term. So by going through this process within the guide, it should leave you with an action plan for your town or parish. And to help bring to life what that final product could look like, we've created, if we go on to the next slide, the action plan of Make Believe Town Council for the next few years. Now, this council has decided they're going to take one action under each domain area. In your town or parish council, you might decide just to prioritise one or two of the domains, or you might be even more ambitious than this. You can adapt this to make it work for you. But so to just briefly go through this guide, this action plan, sorry, under outdoor spaces in buildings, this council is going to be recruiting volunteers to conduct an audit of benches in their towns to identify opportunities to potentially install more where there are gaps. Under transport, they're going to be facilitating older residents in their town to take part in an upcoming transport consultation on proposed bus route changes. Under housing, they're going to be advocating for new housing proposed to be built in their town to make sure that it's built to an accessible standard and to have a mix of housing options that meet the needs of residents at different ages. Under social participation, they're going to be hosting an annual event for International Day of Older People on the 1st of October, with opportunities for older residents to try new things. And this year, they're going to be working with their local leisure centre to offer free taster classes to their local residents. Under respect and social inclusion, they're going to commit to always use the term older people rather than the elderly in their communications. Under civic participation and employment, they're going to be encouraging local groups to offer flexible volunteering opportunities, as they know this flexibility is really important to support older people to be volunteering in the way that they want to. Under communication and information, they're going to be starting an age-friendly newsletter, which shares local opportunities on a quarterly basis, and they're going to apply for funding so that they can deliver this both online as well as in paper copy to people's doors. And under community support and health services, they're going to be working with a local charity to pilot running a community walking group for all ages. So we at Centre for Ageing Better are really looking forward to working with many of you to create your own town or parish action plan over the coming years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Charlotte. And I can see lots of chat going on as well, and lots of really good points that we have attempted to cover in our guide. And I think people are going to hear a little bit more about when they hear from our next speakers. So I'm going to hand over now to Louise Barham, who's the town clerk for Faversham, who's going to talk a bit about how they've approached this issue. Over to you, Louise.
Oh, good morning, everyone. I've been town clerk at Faversham in Kent for 10 years. We're a medieval market town with a population of just over 20,000 people. Our precept is currently 755,000. Like many towns, we are facing expansion from all sides from additional development. Thank you to the Age Friendly team for the opportunity to talk about what we are doing in Faversham. And I will take you through our journey of engaging with older residents and how we identified what we are already doing and what things we could do to improve. During the summer of 2024, Faversham Town Council carried out its most comprehensive resident survey since COVID. We asked people what they liked about living in Faversham, what wasn't working so well, and their views on specific topics such as safety, the environment, and youth provision. The response was strong, but something important became clear during the analysis. Residents were asking why there were no specific questions about older people. The analysis of the results coincided with the SLCC National Conference in October 2024, which included a presentation on age-friendly towns. You could say that was a light bulb moment and a realisation that we had a way forward from our faux pas. The council had been unsuccessful in its fixation on setting up a youth council for years, where young people were just not interested in engaging with us. Yet we had blindly ignored the most engaged group of people who were always first to respond to our various surveys, those who were 50 and over. Within days of returning, I was on the Centre for Ageing Better website and started looking more closely at Faversham's demographics. What I found was striking. Faversham has a higher than average population aged 50 and over. Most of our residents are currently in good health or very good health. Households are typically one or two people, and over 40% of residents are economically inactive by choice, with only around 10% providing unpaid care. That made me realise there was a huge opportunity here. By becoming more age-friendly, we could support well-being, reduce isolation, encourage volunteering and civic participation, and help people stay active and independent for longer. By the end of October 2024, our community committee had unanimously resolved that Faversham should work towards becoming an age-friendly town. We started by looking at the World Health Organisation's 8 age-friendly domains, but we were realistic. As a town council with limited statutory powers and resources, we focused on actions that were achievable and within our remit. We started by looking at the outdoor spaces and buildings domain. Importantly, this work didn't start from scratch. We had already been auditing public spaces, improving seating, dropped curbs and crossings for years. One simple but effective change was improved signage. With UK SPF funding secured, we provided more signs on popular walking routes, colour-coded for different areas, and included walking times in minutes. This not only benefited older people, but also parents with children, visitors, and new people to the town. We've added benches on key walking routes and worked with the Borough Council to improve accessibility on shopping streets for pedestrians and blue badge holders. Through our active travel committee, significant work was already underway to make walking around Faversham easier and safer, and I'll go into more detail shortly. Transport was the second domain we looked at and was another strong area. When a local village bus service was lost, the council stepped in, secured funding, and now runs a Section 22 service. Establishing the Faversham Hopper bus service, which accepts bus passes and serves areas not covered by other routes, has become a lifeline for many older residents. Around 90% of our volunteer drivers are over 50, including 2 in their 70s, which perfectly illustrates that older residents are not just service users, but active contributors. The bus not only provides a mechanism for getting from A to B, but is a social lifeline. One passenger had not been out of the house since his wife had passed away. He just rides the full circuit chatting, so drivers and passengers have now become friends. The last of the domains I will look at today is community support and health services. We work closely with the Faversham Community Networking Group, which brings together around 80 organisations, including Age UK, Citizens Advice, community centres and social prescribers. Together, we developed a really successful Z-fold, which is an information sheet that folds down to a credit card size and is full of helpful information, asking, do you want to get more involved with your community, make positive changes to your life and meet new people? This came about during Loneliness Awareness Week, when we held a chatty bench event. With so many organisations involved with the Faversham Community Networking Group, we were handing out folders of information. A much more discreet method was needed. Another key partner in our work is Faversham Healthy Futures, which developed a research-based project with the University of Kent to understand how the town's future health and care needs can be met. We started working on a local cycling and walking infrastructure plan in 2021, working with members of the community to recognise the most used routes. We finally completed this work in 2022 and prioritised developing an east to west walking route across the town. We funded the initial proposal and were then fortunate that this attracted £1 million funding from Active Travel England for Kent County Council. This work has led to improved road crossings, so more zebra crossings, footpaths, additional drop curbs and benches, which has all increased confidence to walk independently. We're now developing a north to south walking route, having just completed a public exhibition, which has already received a small amount of funding from Active Travel England to work up the proposal. Although this is not specifically initiated for older residents, they have benefited from the additions. Our future plans. One clear message is the need for more consistent and meaningful ways for residents, particularly older residents, to influence health and care decisions. We are now working with Faversham Healthy Futures on setting up a Citizens Alliance or Assembly. That will allow people to co-design services and hold providers to account, which is a role the Town Council is well placed to support. Looking ahead, we are using the age-friendly survey to get a better understanding of older people's needs. We will work with KCC to recruit age-friendly ambassadors, and following a bus users survey, we are supporting the setting up of a bus users group. We will continue to embed age-friendly thinking in everything that we do. In conclusion, we started by focusing heavily on youth, without fully recognising that many of those responding were aged 50 and over. Now, we're actively redesigning our engagement so all ages are heard. Being age-friendly isn't about prioritising one group over another. It's about creating a town that works better for everyone, now and in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Louise. That really brought alive a lot of the points that Charlotte was making, and also congratulations for keeping within a very tight 10 minutes. So thank you. Just a reminder, I can see some really great responses and also intros in the chat from people all over the country. If you have questions for Louise or any of the panelists, please do pop it into the Q&A function. But I am hoping, I know we had some technical issues earlier, but I'm hoping that we now have our speakers from Yate with us. If you're here, hey, Councillor Kirby and Julia. So Julia Alden's a town clerk at Yate, town council in South Gloucestershire, and Councillor Cheryl Kirby is obviously a councillor in Yate. A little bit of a personal declaration of interest is that Yate is my hometown. My mother lives in Yate, and many of the things that you'll be introducing today, she's an avid user of. So this is very personal. And this was a complete coincidence, but it's wonderful to hear from my hometown, which I know is very important to her and to others. I'm handing over to you both.
Good morning to you. Thank you very much. And that's really lovely to hear that you've got a vested interest in our town. You've kind of stolen my thunder because I was going to explain where Yate is. But for those that don't know, we are in South Gloucestershire. We're very handily placed between Bristol and Bath, the Severn Bridge. So by default, we're a wonderful place for commuters and anyone who needs access to the Southwest and London. It's very attractive to people. This was spotted by developers back in the late 1950s, 1960s, who spotted it as being, prime development land. And Yate went very quickly from being a small village into a big town. For once, the planners got things quite right, that they built some good facilities, a massive shopping centre, lots of health care. This, by default, meant that all those young families that moved in the 1960s all aged at the same time and all met their older years at roughly the same time. So this led us to about 30 years ago to discover we needed to take a little bit of action. In terms of Yate Town Council and our size, we've been around for 132 years. When I say we, I don't mean us two, the council. Although to be fair, between us, we probably add up to 132 years. We have 10 community venues. We have a youth centre, a heritage centre, 15 parks, play areas, 47 staff, and a precept of over 2 million. So by default, we sound like we're a very big council. We have lots of money to throw at this. Probably like most of you, you need to balance the books. So in essence, what we spend on the Aging Better scheme is actually quite low cost. So Cheryl's now going to give you some bullet points of some of the things that we do. And some of this, we use our existing facilities. We don't throw a lot of money at it. So with the immortal words of next slide, please.
No, leave it on that slide.
Oh, Cheryl wants it to stay.
Can you go back to the previous slide, please? Thank you very much.
That told me. I'll hand it to Cheryl now.
Yate has actually got a population of about 31,000 people, and that includes neighbouring parishes who actually we ask for grants on a regular basis. But just going round the screen, you can see some of the groups that we interact with. And the main thing is for us, I would say we're about 5 years down the line from the report that was issued. We did ours in 2019 and quickly established that we're all heating 60, me included, all at the same time in the same area. And we went to our unitary council and said, what have you got for those group of people? And they had nothing. So we've had to invent a lot of this ourselves. One thing, as Julia said, we don't have a pot of money, so we needed to be efficient about how we rolled out initiatives and activities. So looking on the screen, looking round, you see the top one with the track, that's our present mayor, and youth and old all joining in together to race around our Yate Outdoor Sports Centre. Then we have the sea shanties being sung at Yate Aging Better Festival, which we hold every year. Another one of our mayors banging a drum like a lunatic, but he loves it. Then we've got the grant handing out procedures. Then we have a picture of the Yate Aging Better Festival actually held between Yate Shopping Centre and the Sports Centre, so it's a nice area. The shops love us. We bring in so much trade for them. And actually we don't, apart from laying out the stalls and such like, we book stalls in of all sorts. So it could be bridge, it could be men's sheds, it could be the care homes, it could be South Gloss with their social care, it could be the library, it could be conservation groups. It's amazing who comes along, very well attended. Then we have Corinne dancing with one of our older residents in our senior cinema, which is actually expanding to a much younger group. But as we say, we're trying to interact this right across our town. You see the red canopy there, that's the Aging Better Festival. And then above that is the parish band playing outside the Heritage Centre with all the events going on there. If we could have the next slide, please. This is our only slide, this is it now. So just briefly, round our Aging Better Health and Wellbeing Subcommittee, these are the categories with the colours for what we've identified our activities and facilities. So we do the warm welcome, which you may have done yourselves in there. We're an age-friendly employer, in fact, and we do have someone who's going to, an older member of staff is going to do puppy guiding and will come into the council to do that. Our parks, of which I'm very lucky, I live right next to one, has got colour benches for dementia, as well as, and we don't call it wheelchair, we call it wheels, because of course nowadays it's mobility scooters, it's scooters, all sorts of transport, and we interact with the local cycle people on that. We do support in local communities, so it's grants, it's making rooms available for meetings. Sometimes we're helped to get them going. So for instance, men's sheds, we got that going, or we floated it out into the market, had a meeting at our Armadillo expecting about 20 people, 20 blokes to turn up, and 80 turned up. So we were running around on that one, but that's up and going in one of the parish halls. And they just come to us recently for a grant for a table tennis. So brilliant, on you go sort of stuff. The Poplin Cafe originally set up for over 50s because at the time Yate didn't have any cafes that really suited that age group. But it's evolved and is still evolving into all sorts of facilities across the town, such as dementia, such as Yate Heritage Centre goes in and does oral history there. We have the resettlement communities there. So it's very much everything has to cross across the town. It needs to meet all ages, all abilities, and all needs as much as it can do. What's that one underneath there? I can't see.
That's our volunteer opportunity.
Our volunteer opportunities. I would say to you, we would heartily agree with the survey that was mentioned before. And that's mainly because pensionable ages have gone up radically. So the available volunteer group has severely restricted. COVID, yes, I don't think there's anywhere in the country that hasn't been hit by it in the name of volunteers. We're beginning to find that we're becoming back up to pre-COVID levels with volunteers, but we would really like to reach for the young as well as the older generation and more skills, so that'd be interesting. It's one where we never expected to have COVID, and it's provided new challenges for us. But I think as a town council, we're up for the challenge and we do work as one. And we're going to keep meeting those challenges as best we can with the other groups around in the town. And I think that's about the end of our chat, actually, Natalie.
We've put a QR code which will come out with the slides, so if that will take you straight through to our webpage, which has details of all the provision that we provide. And obviously we're here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. That was a really good example as well, when you look around the circle about how much of that crosses over with those 8 domains, you know, with the employment and with the outdoor spaces and buildings, and then the social and the community support. So it's really great to get a flavour from those different activities. And apologies, Julia, I think I took away one of your responsibilities. You're Deputy Town Clerk and Service Support Manager for Yate, aren't you? So I introduced you incorrectly earlier.
Don't worry at all. I answer to anything.
Thank you very much, both. So speakers, I think, and we've got a couple of other new speakers joining us now. We're going to just set up our panel. So I would encourage everyone who's attending to add any questions that they have into the Q&A, but I've got some to start off with. We are also, as well as the speakers you've just heard from, We've also got Chris Borg from NALC, who've been a huge supporter of this work and one of the reasons we've managed to engage so many towns and parishes in its development, and who's also endorsed this guide, and also Lois Beach from Housing Lynn, who worked with us on the guide's development. And the panel is here to consider how local councils can get buy-in and get started on age-friendly work, as well as to answer some of your questions. So I've got a question first of all. Welcome, Chris, and thanks for joining us this morning. I've got a question that's an NALC one focused really. Obviously, we're really pleased to have you all endorsing this report, and clearly you think this is important for your members. But could you talk a little bit about what some of the agendas for local councils are that overlap with age friendly from your perspective?
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Natalie. Fantastic that the event's happening today, and thanks for the invitation to contribute. Delighted to be here. Yeah, good question. I think in contributing, just some thoughts during the drafting stage to Bianca and Charlotte and others while the drafting was going on. It was obvious that this theme does cross-cut, doesn't it? As has been evidenced by the brilliant work that Yate and Faversham town councils are doing into various other kind of service areas and asset management areas that town and parish councils kind of deliver. So it's right up their street, right up our street. I share your surmise completely, which is that parish and town councils in the current climate, and in any case, are the solution to a lot of gaps in service provision, in making communities more age friendly. So, just a brief background regarding us, and I'll only speak briefly because as I say, we're here to thoroughly endorse the guide, which was fantastic. Now represents about 10,000 parish and town councils in England. And there are 43 county associations which support us to work with member councils, of which 100,000 parish and town councillors roughly, support their councils in the country. Our estimate is it's something like 14 million hours of voluntary input. That was at the last kind of attempt to gauge that on our part, which may be a couple of years old, so forgive me. Overseeing roughly £2 billion of public monies invested in their communities. So to answer your question, Natalie, a lot of scope to actually make a difference for these councils. Some are more active than others, some are bigger than others. Yate is what we would call a super council, which is one of the bigger hitters, £1 million plus preset and spend. And Faversham is certainly on the cusp of that and doing some fantastic work there as well. So, in short, we're proud to have partnered with yourselves at Centre for Rating Better on the new guide, which explicitly, is designed to help parish and town councils create age-friendly communities. And who are we to not thoroughly endorse something which is specific for our sector? It's not often that, apart from maybe research purposes, that external organisations do something specific for our sector. And we aren't experts at our end. I'm certainly not an expert in service provision for age-friendly communities. So collaboration like this is fantastic. And it reflects our shared commitment to improving health, well-being, and quality of life at the very local level. So maybe there are three of the main areas, Natalie, that cross cuts with this work, and to supporting councils to respond effectively to demographic change, which Charlotte alluded to earlier on. Just briefly, the guide, I think recognises the unique role that parish and town councils play in shaping places where people can age well. The backdrop we've all been aware of since last year when, I know this project at your end, Natalie, was kind of taking shape. New government, 40 new parish councils we think are going to be created. Boroughs and districts are almost all going to go. New strategic unitary authorities created. So almost anything that the middle tier of local authorities was doing is inevitably going to fall for older people. Is inevitably going to fall in terms of service provision to guess who? Parish and town councils. And our position is that we think that the rest of England that isn't parish, should be parish, where communities want them, to help that happen. They're often the first to experience the impacts of an ageing population, like Charlotte said, and with strong community connections, they are uniquely placed to act. So, like residents of 65 and over, parish and town councils of it, themselves have a huge contribution to make in that agenda in a variety of ways. at once helping them to make their places more age friendly and to contribute to community projects. And that's where I think older people can really themselves use their experience, many of whom do as parish councillors, as you know, and some of whom have been supportive of their communities as such for years and years, and they know their place better than anyone. So just to finish, whilst the guide aligns closely with our health and well-being work, and again, I stress to add that NELC is not an expert on health and well-being, but what we can do is share good practice, and this kind of falls under that umbrella. Supporting parish and town councils to take preventative place-based action that helps residents stay connected, active and healthy throughout later life. And parish councils can also tailor much of their work around climate change, e.g. providing low carbon community transport for elderly residents. There are examples in the country of town and parish councils, mainly the town councils, moving into that space. And again, it was alluded to by Louise from Faversham about older people using community transport as a kind of social outlet, and that is certainly true. But as principal authorities, fall away, and there are fewer of them, again, there's an opportunity for parish councils to run their own schemes or contribute financially to them and move into that space. And finally, planning. So factoring in age-friendly actions into parish-led neighbourhood plans, it was a blow that the funding went for that, but we're encouraging parish councils to still continue to do that, because they're a brilliant way of factoring in social and economic and environmental needs of communities into the planning system. Hopefully that answers your question, Natalie.
It does, thank you. That's really comprehensive. And I have a little bit of a follow-up tip. I'm going to go to Lois, and then I have a few questions from the chat and elsewhere that I can pick up to the speakers. But Lois, one of the really good things about this guide, and of course I'm really proud of the work that everyone has done to put together, is how the 8 domains and some of the activities are broken down in relation to the things that local town and parish councils can do. So it would be great to hear from you what you noticed from the work around the policy levers that can be used to embed it.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. And yeah, thanks for inviting me to be part of this panel. It was very much, an honour of mine to be working on the guide and see all the great things that people on the screen and in the room are kind of already doing to make their areas age friendly. And I think with that in mind, I think there are a series of policy levers because of the existing work that towns and parishes are already doing that can maybe be, taken forward. And there's probably about 4 or 5 that maybe that have emerged from this research. I think probably the first is just, and probably one of the strongest, is simply just naming age friendliness as a priority in sort of core council documents. So whether that's things like community plans or strategies, neighbourhood plans that I know Chris, you've already mentioned, and maybe I'll come on to a bit more about kind of what those are and how those can be used as well. Because I think when age-friendly principles are written into those, it effectively sort of like shapes day-to-day decisions about sort of spending, engagements, or partnerships that people have with different organisations. So I think that's a really strong sort of policy lever that came out of the research. And then secondly, for us, I know Chris has already mentioned neighbourhood planning, but I think it's really, really crucial, and definitely something that a neighbourhood plan effectively sets out things around kind of the how a local area wants their town and parish to kind of develop over time. What are some of the needs that are arising, things around kind of what's needed in relation to housing type, quality and accessibility of new development, things around green spaces and protecting or improving those, transportation routes and those sorts of things. So whilst I know neighbourhood plan's not a statutory duty, but I think when we saw that town or parish councils do develop one, it does become part of the I guess there's a statutory development plan for an area. So that basically means that planning decisions must take it into account alongside the local authority's local plan. So it's a really, really strong policy lever, I think, in terms of embedding age friendliness across sort of not only the sort of town and parish, but then into the wider sort of principal authority thinking as well. And I think in our guide, we've got reference to Westbury neighbourhood plan, but I'm well aware that I think Faversham also has one, so maybe Louise can sort of touch on that as well. And then I think probably the most important, one of the other important levers is around how town and parish councils effectively, really strong listeners to their local communities. They're that sort of route in for the other sort of tiers. So whether that's through doing things like surveys or kind of meetings, I think it just sort of, I know what Chris was saying about kind of local government reorganisation, how that kind of might change, and perhaps sort of we might have fewer opportunities for people to sort of connect with the tier above. So I think it becomes perhaps more of a stronger emphasis on sort of town and parish councils to be that voice of their local community. And I know we heard in some of the focus groups that we did that often people don't necessarily, or town and parishes don't necessarily feel that they're listened to by sort of principal authorities, but I think there's scope there with LGR to kind of strengthen and bring that voice and collective voice together, particularly through that kind of age-friendly lens. So yeah, just a few kind of pointers, but I think, as Charlotte has already mentioned, the wheel that we developed as collaboratively was very much intended to demonstrate, how kind of what people are already doing can just be seen through a different lens. So it's not about kind of trying to um, create more work for kind of really small councils that are pressed for time and budgets, but yeah, trying to sort of build that age friendliness in at the outset, which is I guess why my first priority was around actually just recognizing age friendliness in the first instance. So yeah, hopefully that again has answered your question.
Brilliant, thanks, Louise. And you actually stole one of my questions. I was thinking of asking later on about the local government reorganisation, but I'm conscious we've got some great questions in the chat as well, and I think that Louise, Cheryl, and Julia can support us with. So there's one around. You've talked a little bit about the powers, and I know, Louise, in your presentation you talked a bit about some of the creative ways you looked for funding for this. And also, as colleagues in Yate were very clear, there isn't a lot of money around, and that also has come through in the Q&A. So maybe if I go to Louise first to talk about maybe how they've gone around getting some of this work funded. And there's a particular question around how do you get something like surveys funded? And then maybe if you could, colleagues in Yate could follow up after that, that would be great. Louise.
Yes, so if I just talk about our surveys, we've actually funded those ourselves. They're not too costly to actually do. We use SurveyMonkey quite a lot, but we also provide paper copies. So we try and get out a lot of our surveys. We do quarterly newsletters. So we try and include, as long as the surveys aren't too lengthy, they go out in our newsletters. We also have paper copies available from our offices and other community centres. So actually doing that work doesn't cost us an awful lot more than our everyday outgoings. And we're currently using it's quite an extensive older people's survey. It's about 8 pages. So we're actually going into our almshouses and older people's residences to help them complete the forms. So we've actually got volunteers helping us with that.
Brilliant, thanks, Louise. Would you just mind just adding a few of those examples of where else you've looked for funding from, or where you've been lucky enough, like you mentioned?
Yes, we've been lucky, really. What we tend to do is seed fund some projects. So I mentioned our local cycling and walking infrastructure plan. So we funded that ourselves. And out of that, we developed an east-west walking project, which again, we funded ourselves the detail, the small detail, the beginning, and effectively gave our county council a ready-made project on the shelf. So when active travel funding from Active Travel England became available, they had a ready-made project, which was so much easier for themselves because they're short of money and time. So that's what we're finding. If we spend a little bit of seed money ourselves and have something that's ready to go, and this is what we're doing with our second project, which is a north to south walking route. We've done a small bit of funding ourselves. We've been fortunate enough, there's the UK SPF funding as well, and there's some future funding from Pride in Place. So there is some government money out there, and we find that we work very closely with our borough council and our county council officers, and I think building that relationship with them puts us on top of the pile, basically. So it's definitely worth building some relationships.
Thank you, Louise. It sounds a little bit like you've been making your own luck there, but I think that's a helpful tip. I saw Cheryl and Julia, you were nodding a bit when Louise spoke. Would either of you like to add or respond to that question?
Yeah, sure. In terms of surveys, we very similar to Louise, we fly posted everywhere we could possibly think of that would be useful to do. We also used our social media and had QR codes and all sorts and gathered that information. Quite often we found that people were interested in all sorts, but they didn't actually know these things existed. So sometimes it was as simple as just being able to signpost people to existing provision. And we found out, a lot of people were interested in the men's sheds or singing, the choirs. Rock choir is massive in our area, and actually we signposted lots of people to local choirs and singing groups. And we didn't actually have to provide the service. We just provided a sort of hub of information, and hence why we on our website we set up a page purely for Yeat Aging Better. In terms of funding, again, we go to anyone who possibly might give us a grant, including going to the supermarkets, Waitrose with their little green buttons, and our local Morrisons, they often provide us with free food that we can then put on little lunches or afternoon teas and at our cafe, and then people pay what they can. So we don't charge for it, but actually we say to them, if you can afford something, it helps us to fund something else. So those are pretty inexpensive things that we do that actually are really easy. You don't have to go in hard. You can start small and just build from there.
Brilliant, thank you.
Yeah, from a councillor point of view, I would say you need to get councillor buy-in from everyone. The staff could not do anything without us signing off what was going on. Because at the end of the day, if they're doing project work or grant work on something we're not aware of, that's money not being, or we're not aware of as elected representatives. So my first say is get your councillors on board, make sure they're active on the subcommittees that are there. And then for grant money, I mean, like Julia does, we try everywhere. We go to the West of England Combined Authority for transport to make sure that our local community travel, you may know this one, Natalie, is the Green Community Travel. We plough money into it. Actually, it's not much, obviously, but WECA use it because it is classed as a significant support in the area. We also get money from South Gloucestershire Council, and it is quite handy having quite a few of our councillors at South Gloss. And one of the cabinet member for planning, she is very active in trying to ensure that the local plan includes housing, not just suitable for families, but for the older generation. So, they don't necessarily need 3-bedroom houses. They wouldn't mind a 2-bedroom little bungalow, please, with a little bit garden. And we, as you know, Natalie and Yeat, we haven't got a lot of that. And we haven't got a lot of space, to be honest with you, by the time the developers are finished with us. But my overall thing I would say to you is get your councillors on board, be committed to it, make sure you spend as little as you can. And we're not telling people what they should be doing. We just provide a spot where you can come to us and say, well, I want to build a nest box. Where can I go? And actually, even Yeat Town Council, we use men's sheds to build our back boxes and such like, for instance. And we have recycling of the blister packs for the pills. My God, it gets full up really quickly, but that's interesting. And it's all those little things that just make life not quite so difficult for everyone. It's
Brilliant.
an
Thank you.
ongoing
Some really
process.
good examples of resourcefulness, I think, and operating at different levels, kind of from your local Waitrose to your combined authority or strategic authority, and how important it is about that. I think that for me feels like something important about the age-friendly approach, as well as sometimes it's about making connections between things that already exist, not necessarily having to create it all. But I also really like Louise's point around start something, proof of concept, get someone else to fund it bigger if you can, be ready. Charlotte, there was a kind of, this is actually a really interesting question that comes up a lot. So I'm going to maybe go to Charlotte and then see if colleagues have other examples. But this one around the intergenerational, older people, this narrative, older people are fine, and I know and don't have it so bad, and how we counter that. And even one of the questions is why, older people's day, can't it be for everyone or intergenerational? And it's something we hear when we're out and about, that people want to focus on different age groups. So how do we counter that? And then I'm sure Louise, Cheryl, and Julie, you've heard that as well in your work.
Thanks, Natalie. So I think the kind of important thing to state with this is, although we talked about older people a lot throughout the presentation, it's age-friendly communities, it's age-friendly towns and parishes. The whole approach in this work is about making sure that the places that we live, the towns and parishes that we represent, are places that support people of all ages to age well. And that's thinking about what people need at different points of the life course. But we know that in older age, there can be specific barriers or life experiences that can make it harder and can mean that the communities are not always as supportive and welcoming as they can be. So if I kind of wanted to come back to the definition I shared at the start of what an age-friendly community is, we say it's a place that enables people to age well and live a good later life. So I think with this work and the way that we talk about it, we need to make sure that we hold both things in mind. And sometimes it can be hard to do when we're starting this work for the first time, potentially, that to kind of communicate that nuance, but it doesn't have to be an and or. And I think that even when we are delivering things or developing things that are specifically maybe targeted for older people, that we know that there are many other groups of society that will benefit from those things. We know that if we do our walking audits and we make our streets and pavements more accessible for older people, perhaps we put in some benches, that will also benefit people with disabled people in our community. It might benefit a new parent with a stroller in the community. These things do not have to be kind of quite so binary. And then to come on the specific question around International Day of Older People and can that be intergenerational? Ultimately, these national international days are there to be adapted in whatever way kind of suits your needs and interests. So I think International Day of Older People is important to kind of keep that older people's focus to a degree and have that as we often use it as an opportunity to really celebrate the contributions of older people in society. That doesn't mean that you might not hold intergenerational things as part of that. But there are also a number of other national and international days that can be beneficial to mark as well. So I just pulled out International Day of Older People on the 1st of October. There is a global intergenerational week in April if you want to really focus on that intergenerational aspect. And also we at the Centre for Ageing Better support the Age Without Limits campaign, which is the first nationwide campaign across England to tackle ageism. And we host an Age Without Limits Day in June annually. So that can be a place to really think about ageism in different age groups and intergenerational as well. And I think the final plug on that is that we, for that Age Without Limits Day in June, we are making a number of micro grants available to community groups to apply for. The application process for that shuts at the end of on Sunday, at the end of this week. So it's only a few more days, but it might be something that could be of interest to community groups in your town or parish to come up with an idea to host an event or an activity for that intergenerational for that Age Without Limits Day, and we'll put that link to that day and the grants themselves into the chat and send it out afterwards.
Thanks, Charlotte. Would anyone else like to respond to how they kind of whether there's been any backlash for focusing on older people in their area? Louise, you look like you're about to unmute.
We've definitely not had any backlash at all. It's been seen as being a very positive. As I said in my presentation, we've been focusing so much on the youth. We forgot about actually the majority of our residents are 50 plus. So yes, it's definitely been seen as a very positive move. But many of the things that we're doing and have done benefit all ages.
Yeah, brilliant. And I can see you nodding as well there, Julie and Cheryl.
Yeah, we're sort of like probably 3 or 4 years down the line, and we are beginning to reap the benefits of having stuff going on in Yate, which is the whole age range. And we are lucky in a way, because we've got that group of elder people all hitting the same age group at the same time. But it's when you're sitting or standing in the Aging Better Festival and Julia's on the stage singing her head off, and there's hundreds of people there milling around and chatting about what's on Coronation Street and all the rest of it, they're happy. They're very, very happy. And it isn't just that age group, it's families coming along and they're picking up on stuff like conservation work. The shops absolutely love us. We just bring in footfall into the shopping centre. The shopping centre manager thinks we're the best thing since sliced bread. So lots of benefits for the community. We're trying to work now on harmonising Southgate and Northgate. And Northgate is where the development's going on, and Southgate is where we've got the older generation. So that's an interesting, especially with bus routes being chopped about and all the rest of it, is trying to get into the future and perhaps doing pop-ups in the various areas to try and get that message across. And what we do for Southgate is going to be a little different to what we do to Northgate. So yeah, onwards and upwards is what I would say.
Great, thank you. That's really helpful. And I think that's interesting as well. I think what you've, Louise and you, Julia, have kind of highlighted in some ways, something at the Centre for Ageing Better. There can sometimes be a national dialogue around this intergenerational conflict. But actually, when you get into local areas, you're talking about families who care about each other and do things together. And it sort of tends to be less of a concern when you get to that hyper local level and people's realities on the ground. I have a question which probably everybody could answer, Chris and others. So I'm going to see who wants to have a go. It's that someone's asked a kind of challenging, as the clerk and RFO, don't know what that stands for, but I'm sure you all do, of parish council, is it a good use of my time to investigate and work on these kinds of projects? So that's quite a big question. Okay, Julia. Sorry, Cheryl.
I think that goes back to my original suggestion is you need to get your councillors on board, because if Julia was to come and say to us, well, actually, I don't think that's very good use of my time, I think Julia would know how we would feel about that. It's actually, this is what we're doing for the town, and we are elected by the town to support that. And it's a conversation, and it can be quite interesting to have that talk, and any research you can do beforehand before approaching your councillors is always useful. And the survey, Louise has talked about, you can do a survey quite easily, can't you, to back up what you're trying to do. If your council is not that way inclined, a parish clerk trying to do it on their own is very, very hard. Very hard indeed. You need that commitment, both of you. We're working together forward. However, you can change people's minds.
Great. Chris.
Yeah, fully endorse that. I think, just to return to what I was saying before, you're absolutely right, Natalie. And this is where, largely the role of NALC in all of this is signposting, sharing good practice, making sure that relevant materials like the excellent guide are cascaded through county associations and hitting the grassroots with I remember parish councils, which are often under-resourced. But equally, I agree completely with what Cheryl's just said. The age funding committees, now need to come into the fore in terms of public policy a lot more, especially for the next parliament than they have in the previous parliament. And I think actually we're in a better place now because there's arguably more of an emphasis on the public sector, not just saving local government, but the role of local government writ large is actually probably fairly limited in terms of the higher levels as to what it can do with big strategic authorities. One thing we have pointed out in our responses to government consultations, stuff like that, is this concept of remote government. So not having huge rural areas where you've got the maybe not even fully parished, where you've got the town hall 60 miles away. Well, who do you then go to if you haven't got a parish council to worry about these things and actually and engage with if there's no provision for older people? So I think that's why we're arguing for fully parished areas. And Cheryl's absolutely right. It's a partnership between clerks. RFO, by the way, is responsible financial officer, so they're often the same person, but not always. as Louise, Cheryl, and Julie will know. But basically, it's a team effort, and actually, councillors who Nell technically represents know exactly what's going on in their patch, and they work tremendously closely with all ages of residents, and so they'll know people like Cheryl will know exactly what the needs of older people in their patch are, as you said. So I think. We're arguing, for that because we know that across the public policy piece, parish and town councils can make a big difference simply because they know their place better. And as you said, Natalie, it's about the realpolitik on the ground. And let's face it, these huge, big government entities that are going to be created across often 2 or 3 counties are just going to be too far removed to know how to make a difference.
Really?
Who are they going to ask? Well, in the same way that the West of England combined authority has that's a start actually because we met the MP recently who represented that or who'd used to work there. She used to be the policy advisor and said that actually she thought that the town and parish councils in the west of England could make a huge difference with community transport. So she's now an MP over in Luton, but basically that belied what our suspicion was. So yeah, fully endorse that, and I think we could only work together to make this agenda much more prevalent over the next.
Such a comprehensive response, and actually that does tie back into Lois's point around government reorganisation as being an opportunity here. I'm very conscious that as chair, I have left the last 4 minutes. I want everyone to be able to leave on time, and we should probably come to the end of our formal questions. And I just really want to thank all of the panelists. I couldn't get all of the answers to you, all the questions to you and some of the things that are coming up in the chat, but we are going to make an effort afterwards. We'll send out the report, we'll send out the slides and the recording, and any questions that are unanswered that we can answer, we'll also have a look at. We're also putting together, we will be doing more events focused on you all as an audience, towns and parish councils. We really do think that you're a really essential part of the puzzle here. And we're also looking to put together a peer group, support group or working group. We still need to explore what that looks like, but with town and parish councils are interested in working on this, if they want to come together and learn from each other and figure out how to do that, please respond to the expression of interest survey that will go out after this session. And I know I've seen some emails go in the chat, so pop your email down there as well and we'll capture that and we'll send out an email to those people who are interested. And I would really ask you all just to hold on a little bit before we leave, because we've got a couple of polls just to get some feedback immediately, because it's really important to us that we understand whether this has worked for you and how we could make improvements. And there'll also be another opportunity to do that. So if you could respond there, that would be great. But Louise, Chris, Lois, Councillor Cheryl and Julia, brilliant inputs, and Charlotte, sorry, I'm taking my team for granted. Brilliant work, and thank you so much for your contributions today. We'll give it a little bit longer for this poll and then we'll end it, and then we've got one more. We've got the second question underneath. Brilliant. But yeah, feel free to leave when you're ready and get on with your days, and I hope you have a good day and good weekend. I'm going to suggest have we just end the poll? Great. Share the results.
Thanks, everyone. So great to see such a positive response. I'm going to head off now, but yeah, really appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
Lois. I'm sorry we didn't get many more questions to you.
No,
There were so
all
many
good.
to cover. Thanks so much.
Lots to cover. Thank you.